Europe is changing, no doubt about that. Militarily, politically, economically, the global change is swift and so needs to be European one. But it looks like the European Union is not always at the required pace. Being a neighbor at times of change is a great challenge indeed, not only our future, but even the present of the whole European family is at stake. What policy, what way to choose, how to deal with what's looming on the horizon, what is the very event horizon even today. Well, a unique chance we couldn't miss really to talk to someone who represents it all, the ambassador of European Union in Ukraine, and she's right now in Kiev with us. Katarina Mathernova joins us for a discussion tonight. Madam, thank you so very much for joining us physically and online.
Доброго ранку, рада вас бачити. Normally I'm in Kiev, but this week, in fact, I'm in Brussels, where the Association Council took place, which is the highest body of governance between the European Union and Ukraine, and your Prime Minister and a number of ministers represented Ukraine, and that's the reason that this week I'm in fact in Brussels.
Right, well, Brussels and Kiev, I know, quite far away, but your job is very important and you present it in there and here, and this is a big thing for us. We really appreciate it. And a changing Europe and a challenge it faces, being one of the top officials in Europe, what would you call a top priority on the list of challenges today for Europe?
Well, I think security and the new European security architecture is one of the key challenges. And that's why it's very important for both the European Union and Ukraine that we see Ukraine as part of the solution to the security challenge, and we are in it together. So I think that's one of the key challenges. And then what emerged more recently is, of course, the situation of very tense international trade, with trade war looming. Now it's put on a pause, and again, this is something where we are in it as a continent together. But before we go further, I just want to express my solidarity and sympathy with your TV that has, in fact, in this brutal Russian war, been hit twice. If I'm not mistaken, your newsroom was damaged as recently as a week ago, and all correct journalism, all independent journalism coming from Ukraine is extremely important, and that's why we stand with you and support you. Because there is a lot of disinformation out there, a lot of false narratives, and it's journalism that needs to overcome that.
Madam, thank you so very much indeed. Our office was obliterated. It was second time in the row, but I want to say that my colleagues in Ukraine, we consider that really a badge of honor, because we must be doing something really right. If Russians trying to hunt us down already for second time in a row, somehow, luckily, I don't know, thank God, everyone survived when we continue our job. So thank you so very much. But we're not the only one in Ukraine, no way. I mean, recent missile attacks on Kryvyi Rih, for example, that resulted in a cold-blooded child murder and civilian casualties, as you know. Well, we hear some voices. Some say condemnation of EU and international community is very important. No doubt about that. But what I doubt is that the families of those who lost their children would care for equally numerous and useless expressions of deep concerns and all these talkings and words. What they could care for, though, is an action to prevent this act of genocide in the future. Madam, do you believe the European Union has mechanisms to do that and make sure Russia is held accountable, at least, for these acts of, I don't know, inhumane aggression?
Well, first, I think that expressions of solidarity do matter. I think that the fact that all the European ambassadors and a few others went to Kryvyi Rih 2 days ago and visited with the families actually does matter. I think that expressions of solidarity are important in their own right, but they of course have to be matched by action and accompanied by action. And that is, first of all, the reason why we stand very firm and have not abandoned any of our programs that are collecting evidence, that are working on accountability for Russian war crimes, documenting and preserving the evidence. It's now very much on our shoulders as the European Union, and we carry that through and devote a lot of resources to it, human and financial. And at the same time, as you know, the European Union with the coalition of the willing is also working very intensely on developing reassurance force that would be there to help sustain any ceasefire, any eventual peace that will come at the end of the war. And in the process, as President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, we want to make sure that Ukraine is a steel porcupine, dikobraz, so it's able to defend itself more effectively. And I will tell you in which way we do that, perhaps at your next question, so
Exactly.
I don't talk too much.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, but my question was actually, does Europe fully understand that Russia is mortal enemy to it? But you're already answering to it. And please go on with what you wanted to say. It was a question. Ukraine is a steel porcupine, not only for Ukraine, but as a matter of the collective defense of Europe. Is that right?
Indeed. And Europe, and this is important for people to understand, because Europe is not always the best in communicating what it does. But let me just say very clearly, Europe, the member states and the European institutions altogether, we are by far the largest donor to Ukraine, largest partner with around 145 billion euros. We are by far the largest financial donor to your budget. And the military support from Europe is worth about 50 billion euros, and it's still on the increase. Just 2 days ago, we had an announcement that the next tranche of money that comes from the profits from the Russian frozen assets in the amount of 2.1 billion euros will go to Ukraine defense. And part of it will go to procure air defense and ammunition from member states or through our member states. But a full 1 billion euros will go through the Danish model that we all know to the Ukrainian defense industry, because a lot of the capabilities, and this is something that we can very much benefit from and learn from, is the innovative defense industry of Ukraine. So I'm delighted that right now the contracts are being drawn up and the money should be hitting the recipients in Ukraine in a few weeks' time.
Well, Your Excellency, great news, really. Thank you for delivering it to us. Amen to that. And my question is, what are the key areas of military support today? I believe it is drones, right? Unmanned aerial vehicles, systems, and air defense protection. Is that right? Or maybe I don't know something. I'm just asking the question.
The 1 billion will go to the defense industry where the needs are and where the capacities are. And that's really a choice of Ukrainian counterparts. Of course, your drone production, your electronic warfare production, your naval drone production is second to none. But you also have capacities in producing howitzers, various armed vehicles. So that's that part. Where the biggest needs, if we understand correctly, where the biggest needs for delivery of European material is indeed air defense and ammunition. So that's going to be the concentration of this new tranche of money that will actually come from Russian frozen assets, from the proceeds from Russian frozen assets.
I love to be hearing that, Madam, Your Excellency. Can you say that again? It's coming from Russian frozen assets. I'm just loving it.
Yes. From the proceeds, not from the frozen assets themselves, but the proceeds from the Russian frozen assets.
But can I ask a question? What is that a legal or political problem to unfreeze these assets for Ukraine? Or this is far beyond my competence, of course, but I'm struggling to understand, just as everyone else here in Ukraine.
I think it's both. I think it's both political, but even more legal issue, and this is still in debate. I don't think there is a consensus yet, but we are certainly working in that direction too. But that's not going to be short term. But what we do in the meantime, we use the proceeds very actively. And this example was the second batch of military deliveries that will come from it. And then from now on, the proceeds as of this year are actually going to be used to fund the ERA loans, to fund the 50 billion euro package of loans to Ukraine, are going to be backed up by these proceeds.
I can see karma working here. It's good to know this. Let's slide to a different theme, shall we? Ukraine's European integration. Everyone I know is talking about that. So how far are we from that? You think in terms of overall, negotiations and Ukrainian ongoing effort to fight corruption, how far in general Ukraine is from European Union, you think?
Well, I think that Ukraine is well underway in the preparation. I would hesitate to put any quantifying number because that would be alchemy. But Ukraine has done a lot, and even compared to countries that started the accession process earlier than Ukraine is comparing very well. And it has undertaken a lot of what we call fundamentals reform, which is the judiciary, fight against corruption, democratic institution, parliamentary republic, and human rights. And we are right now trying to open the so-called cluster of negotiations. There we are encountering currently a setback because, as you know, accession talks are always subject to unanimity among member states, and we are not quite there yet. But I'm optimistic that within the next few weeks and months we will be able to reach that unanimity. But in the meantime, the work continues both on the Ukrainian side and on the side of the European Commission.
Right.
And here I want to pause for a second just to say that Ukraine has made remarkable progress in reforms while fighting the war. Because of the consensus that exists in the society, one was able to adopt legislation and carry out reforms that were very hard to do even before the full-scale invasion. So what I want to underline is that the reforms did not stop when the fighting started. On the contrary, they accelerated.
Thank you so very much. I'll make sure that President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, will hear your warm words and maybe even react. Thank you so very much. Let's talk about the problems, shall we? Not only sugar, right? What is the main issue on our way to the European Union? Do you think? It is a sort of a speculative question, but still, what do you believe to be the main problem on our way to European family?
Well, I think that what is important to do is to maintain the national unity in favor of reforms that need to be undertaken on the EU path. And this is something which as I mentioned, was doable now, but obviously during the wartime, the normal pluralistic politics has been suspended during wartime because there was an external threat. So they're bound to come back. That's natural, that's normal. But it's important that once the politics are fully back, that there is a clear consensus and an agreement among the different political parties on the importance of carrying out the reforms that we need for EU accession of Ukraine. So I think that's one aspect that is important to keep. And the second aspect that's important is that a lot of the reforms need to continue. You know, it's like you are riding a bicycle, you cannot stop because you fall. So I think that developing and continuing the track record of reforms, fighting against corruption, judicial review, etc., that those reforms indeed continue and don't stop.
What European Union accession actually brings us for Ukraine, it is more or less clear. Safety, economical prosperity, many things, political, militarily. But what is it you believe that Ukraine is bringing to European family?
These days, it's clearer than before that we would be a stronger continent with Ukraine in it. From the perspective of security, I don't think there is doubt in anybody's mind about that. But I would add a very, very important element. I was just on a panel at the EU-Ukraine Business Summit that is taking place in Brussels yesterday and today. And I was on a summit on support to small and medium-sized enterprises. And I mentioned, you know, Europe has this innovation deficit. There was a report by former Prime Minister of Italy, Mario Draghi, that spoke about the need to overcome the innovation gap that Europe has. And I think Ukraine is just the right country to help us bridge that gap because of the innovation that your enterprises and your people had to do just to survive, right? It's innovation and adaptability is part of the Ukrainian famous resilience. And I think that the dynamism that I feel where not only in Kiev, but wherever I travel around Ukraine, the ability to look for opportunities and adjust and innovate is something that would be extremely beneficial for the European Union.
Your Excellency, may I say that when I hear you talking about Ukraine, about the things, first of all, you're amazing, you have an amazing experience. Second, you care. And this is, I feel that. Everyone, I hope my audience will also feel. There's the fire of belief in you. You trust in Ukraine, you believe in us, and that's an enormous thing for us. So again, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Another question.
I mean, you know, living through the air attacks in Ukraine with you, I think that helps.
That helps to build the brotherhood and sisterhood between people, right? A little bit, just only for surviving. And you're also absolutely right. It's the matter of survival. We are so innovative and resilient because we want to survive and not under Russian foot. We want to survive on our own. And thriving Ukraine is the goal. But what about NATO? Do you believe, Your Excellency, that NATO is capable of deterring Russian aggression in terms of Article 5? Like, attack on one is attack on all. Is that still viable or not?
I would prefer not to be commenting on NATO because that's a separate institution, not in my remit. But I think it's well noted that.
Yeah, I would love you to be in charge of NATO. I'm sure if Katarina Mathernova would be in charge of NATO, we would have definitely way better and faster results for the whole of the world's sake, that's for sure. But all right, let's talk about the thing that we started to talk when we started our discussion. Trade war looming on the horizon, or not? How is the EU responding to I don't know, whatever you call it, Trump's way of seeing the global economy, let's put it that way. Is the trade war with the United States possible? Is it already going onwards, maybe?
Well, clear preference of the European Union would be not to have a trade war. I think that we, just like the United States, have benefited greatly from globalization, from the global trade flows and the global supply chains. And the preference of the European Union would be not to get into a tit-for-tat global trade war, but
Right.
if that's going to be the preference of our trading partner, then we are certainly preparing to respond.
How? This is my personal question. I'm struggling to understand how we're going to do that. I mean, some say, I mean, the people are quite experienced in economical things. I've been talking to them all the time, every day almost. And some say we should retaliate, and they gave their reason. Some say we shouldn't. We should just wait because in the end, the consumer pays, right? I mean, that's where the money is. So, how we're going to retaliate. And if there is, and another question, sub-question to that, is there a way to communicate to Donald Trump to make him understand what is going on? I know many tried and many didn't succeed, but maybe we should try again and again until it happens. Or we retaliate, and then how?
I should respond, not to retaliate. I mean, we have, in fact, international trade is communitary competence. So I think the best trade lawyers and trade economists, trade practitioners are, in fact, in Brussels, in the part of the European Commission that deals with international trade. Commissioner Šefčovič is in charge of international trade, and there are, believe me, they are incredibly busy these days. I would say 24/7, preparing a range of trade instruments. So I would not want to jump the gun. We will see what the reaction will be. As we have now seen from the United States, there is a pause of 90 days. So we go through a little bit of a cycle like this, and we will be ready to react when the time comes, in whichever way it's going to be. But I don't want to prejudge what is going to be the reaction of the European Union.
Absolutely, Your Excellency. Just knowing that the work is onwards is enough. And the last question, when you're back to Kiev, please promise me an interview in person.
I will be happy to do that.
Great. Again,
delighted.
Delighted too. The pleasure is all mine. Thank you so very much for your time. Thank you so very much for your tone of voice. Thank you so very much for your experience and being with us in Europe and in Ukraine and knowing for sure why Russia has to be stopped. And hope to talk to you very soon.
Yes.
Stay safe.